just not a good look for either one. I don't know, man.
If anything, I feel like both of their brands in a way got smashed, and both in a way ticked up, depending on who you are.
The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. It is only intended to provide education about the financial industry. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. Any past performance discussed during this program is no guarantee of future results. Any indices referenced for comparison are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. Any references to performance of securities are thought to be materially accurate, and actual performance may differ. As always, please remember investing involves risk and possible loss of principal capital. Please seek advice from a licensed professional.
And we are back with another edition of the Daily Dots. And I am joined as always by the brain trust himself, Mr. Chase Taylor. But he and I have had a disagreement, so I'm no longer going to call him the brain trust. I'm going to call him the squirrel brain. No offense to Squirrel Macro.
Yeah.
And then we're going to proceed to have a back and forth on Twitter for the next 2 days, and we're going to let you guys decide. It's probably a vote that I'm going to lose before it started. And of course, if you don't know what I'm talking about, the bromance turned into a bro down.
It's like Celebrity Deathmatch.
Yeah. Back in the day? Those were hilarious, by the way.
We need a new one just for this.
Yeah. Well, you know what? There's so many. It's a show about finance and politics, right? Well, in politics as it relates to investing, this has serious investment implications.
You can ask Tesla stock, yes.
Yeah, what's it down right now?
At the moment, and we still have 3 minutes, but 13.9.
Also bounced back a little bit.
It has billions and billions of dollars market cap, though.
Yeah. Now, I would just sit there and say, and ironically, I think this is yet another sign how stupid this market is. I didn't understand I just couldn't understand after those last quarters and what's going on fundamentally with Tesla. Like, yeah, he's in with Donald Trump, but unless Donald Trump can create a fresh 2.5 million vehicle per year demand for the guy, I don't really know how that's going to help much. And that's kind of the scary thing. I think if you're a Tesla long here is this is going to very much put the fundamentals of that company back in the spotlight. And it removes the veneer of him having, White House protection. The other thing that you made a really good point at too, and just for the record, I think both of them are idiots. And when I say idiots, I was just talking to Darren about this before we started recording. You see these guys, especially with these net worths, engage in these, these war of words, these
junior high stuff,
piston matches, for lack of a better term. Yeah, junior high stuff. And you look at them and go, guys, this is the most concave shaped outcome, right? Like, meaning this is just all downside for you. For Trump, I mean, Elon added credibility to him in some, to some level. And just getting in a spat with the richest man in the world back and forth on Twitter while you're sitting president, it doesn't help you at all. It's got nothing but political downside. If you're Elon Musk, right back at you. Not only is this not helping you at all, but how many MAGA fans, how many have become Tesla shareholders over the last year?
Or owners of the cars.
Yeah, or owners of the cars. Fairly substantial, right? Like you said, now he's just alienated both parties.
Yeah.
And both sides of the aisle. He is in the crosshairs it's more like he's like dancing in the middle of no man's land between two, warring fronts or something. And just nothing good can come of it. It's a bit of a head scratcher.
Yeah.
It's what they do.
It is. Exactly. I mean, both of these guys have been drugged into the mud for some mudslinging multiple times. Honestly, it's one of the reasons both of them are as popular as they are.
Scorpion and frog.
They kind of enjoy the sport of the mud wrestling, I think. So not shocked. I mean, the way I phrased this earlier was like, this is probably the most predictable thing that's going to happen all year, was that they would have a falling out. Not that it would get this nasty, but that, the falling out was, I mean, Kalshi had like the betting market for how long he would last and stuff. And just because we all knew like you have two egos that can barely fit in the same solar system. So like it's going to get weird at some point. Here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Then the tweet about the reason the Epstein files hadn't been released because they're saying because he said Trump's in it. And then followed that up.
Was have a nice day, DJ.
Yeah. Well, and then followed it up by saying the truth will come out. Mark my words. I don't know what to make of that. I mean, I honestly think that you can draw any conclusions you want to. That wouldn't surprise me at all if Trump was in the Epstein files. Like you and I were talking, I think there's probably I know there is. If Epstein was what he looks to be, which a really nasty guy, but was also a big asset of foreign intelligence and maybe U.S. intelligence to some capacity. I mean, that's going to be a pretty big list of folks to get caught up in.
If the guy's job was to whale hunt, then a lot of whales would be on the list, right?
Yeah, 100%. And so by no depth for people out there, I'm in no way insinuating that Trump was involved in that. I mean, I don't really think there's any evidence to point that's the case. And I think it's funny that Musk worded it the way he was, which is he's in the Epstein files. Well, yeah, I think a lot of people are.
Right.
That being said, just not a good look if for either one. I don't know, man.
If anything, I feel like both of their brands in a way got smashed and both in a way ticked up, depending on who you are.
I don't know I don't see how any of them get any positive benefit from this.
Well, I mean, people have said that about Trump on a lot of things for a lot of years, and I don't know, like just being front and center at all times has its own like thing, it's oxygen.
Yeah, it's just odd for me to see. I
totally agree, but
just too. If I was in those guys' position, man, I would have somebody around me all the time, making sure I don't pop off like that and say, and I would also like to think that I wouldn't.
Back to oxygen.
Yeah, I don't know, man. But interesting. I'm really interested to see where Tesla stock goes from here, because if you think you missed an opportunity to short it, I don't think you have. I'm not advising anybody to go out there and do that. But if the veneer of Trump or whatever assist that was in the MAGA crowd, right, that's clearly gone. Who's he going to sell his cars to, man? And that's an honest question. I mean, because it's not just like you and I have pointed out. This is not at all just a tariff issue.
There's just layers of headwinds.
Yeah.
The popularity of EVs in general are going down. The popularity of Teslas within the EV sphere is going down. I mean, the competition is catching up, not just Chinese, but even the EV Hyundais and things
Rivian.
like that.
There's that new one being launched by Slate, I think is what it's called, isn't it?
Yeah, those are. I hope that becomes real because those are cool.
Yeah, but yeah, not on a political issue for me. This is the kind of thing where I get extraordinarily frustrated that people in their positions, in their seats, have this level of self-control and self-awareness and discipline.
To me, like this and a lot of things like it fits into this like U.S. becoming more like an emerging market theme, or just like Dimitri talks about and plenty of other people, like just sort of like a broader moral decline. Like I think it fits into all that.
Yeah,
not that like political mudslinging is new or a feature of now, and it was like we haven't had that before, but because we've had plenty, it's become very normal, I guess.
Well, they just used to do it in a more refined manner, right?
That
like,
too.
For instance, I mean, if people think that we're at the zenith of political mudslinging, you haven't spent much time examining the late 1800s and the early 1900s.
But
going back to the Revolutionary War,
early 1800s.
Yeah,
like the Jefferson versus
Madison, wasn't it?
I can't know. They were friends.
No, it was Jefferson versus
so him and Hamilton hated each other. Adams.
Yeah, it was him and Adams.
Some of the stuff in the newspapers there, where they would just be like, they would say the most insane lies about each other in the papers and stuff.
I mean, like he's stolen 10 children and has them huddled in his basement. I mean, they were through, but they do it through third parties, right? They would do it through newspapers and things like
I think
that.
rag mags are crazy now.
Yeah. I mean, and I mean, that's in some ways more despicable, but the point is that they were not drugged down by having to be the one that makes the accusation.
Speaking of that exact thing and drugged down, I think a lot of this started with the New York Times piece that said Elon was doing like hard drugs big time during the campaign, which, you know, there's a degree of separation there. Like, oh, we didn't say that. And it's like, oh, okay. I think that's when the gloves actually came off.
Yeah, but where would that, well, I mean, it's the New York Times. So, I mean, I don't know.
That's the beauty of it. There's perfect cover to be like, well, we wouldn't have leaked it to the Times, man.
Yeah, but why would he wouldn't want anybody in the Trump administration to know if he was doing hard drugs?
Well, I mean, if he's doing them on the planes while they're eating cheeseburgers.
Yeah, but I know, but you're going to sit there. I mean, you got
some fries and then some nose candy.
But think of how many people are on those planes. I mean, there's no way he was just snorting lines on the campaign plane.
I don't think either one of those two guys does a lot of editing their own behavior for others. If I'm the richest guy in the world and I want to do cocaine on Air Force One or whatever, I'm doing it. Like, I don't know.
Well, I suppose, I guess if everybody around you, you're used to everybody around you not being able to afford to alienate you or to subjugate you in any way, right? And so I guess maybe you just get completely anesthetized to it. I don't know. I like I said, from the outside looking in, I'm just kind of looking at them both and going, I don't understand what. I mean, you guys are getting in a mud fight before you walk into a wedding. I don't understand who wins here.
Nobody. Well, I mean,
doesn't stop them from doing it.
No.
And it does feel like a school. I mean, it feels like a schoolyard fight. Yeah. So, you know what I mean?
Even, I don't know. Those might be more dignified, but.
Well, I mean, they're offset by the fact they're 16 and 17-year-olds. Right? Yeah. Yeah. And
it's low stakes.
Well, and it just, for the Trump administration too, it's just a blow to credibility that they don't need. It's a blow to everybody's credibility. And talk about just loading the gun for your political opponents. You know what I mean? I see that stuff and it's just a head scratcher to me. Any real world implications in any of this though?
Only if, to me anyway, only if this became like a real targeted thing where they actually went after his contracts, which was the implied threat. And I only say that because SpaceX does very real work for the military and for the U.S. space program. So if it got so petty that we actually took those away, that actually has a national security impact. So, but I don't think I don't think they'll actually do that. Maybe famous last words, but
yeah.
Because as much as I don't think that highly of some of Elon's companies, like I have a lot of respect for SpaceX. Did some work with them in the past, and it's a good company.
Well, and and like you said, they provided a serious need. I personally think that this news, in terms of economic relevance, is probably overshadowing something that's of far more importance, and I think that's the U.S.-China trade negotiation.
That was much more worthy news today.
Yeah. So on that news. And not a lot, again, nothing factual to point to other than just, kind of rhetoric. But and correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've seen, there was a stall, right? Even the administration realized that. There's a bit of a freeze out going on. And from everything I can see and read, China was just basically like, until you're going to give a concession of some kind, until you're going to throw some red meat out there, we're not willing to discuss it with you. Kind of seems like Trump kind of tried to browbeat back. Z seems like he kind of held the line, and now they're meeting to talk. My feeling is twofold. A, kind of like Doge and cost cutting. I think Trump went into this and again, this is just trying to read the tea leaves as they go. I think Trump went into this kind of overestimating. There's leverage in a negotiation, as it relates. See, there's leverage and perceived leverage, right? And if what you value the most highly, the other person doesn't, you probably don't have as much leverage on them as you think you do, right? So in terms of trade, I think the argument that the surplus country is the one that is at the most risk in a trade war, I think that's true. But culturally, as you and I have expressed, if you get into a trade war of attrition with China and you're the US president, you're going to lose.
Right.
And the reason why you've got 3.5 years left in office, right? It's going to be hard on both of your economies. Z isn't facing re-election in 3.5 years. You are, right? Well, he's not. Yeah. Trump will be done. But I do sit there and look at that situation and go, once again, hey, look, I hope whatever improvements we get to any trade relationship with China, I think is a positive development. But the more and more I thought about this, I just thought, if we're going to do the right thing for our country as it relates to China, I feel very similar about that I do the debt, which is that needs to be a much longer term strategy, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, I think we don't know yet. We'll know at some point. I think just for them to get on the phone, we had to give something. Neither side, as of a couple hours ago, last time I was trying to find anything, neither side had really shared any real details. They're going to keep talking and all that. But I'm of the opinion Xi doesn't get on the phone without something. So we'll eventually figure out what that was. To me, this is a very positive development. Just to go from the two most powerful countries in the world, not talking to talking, that's good. I don't have high expectations for anything major coming out of it, largely because I just don't think either side has to give a lot. As long as we're getting, rare earths and things like that, and they get to keep selling things to us, both sides aren't desperate to do much. So I don't think either side will do much, but it's still good that we're kind of opening the thing back up. But it was notable to me, on a day where they talk, granted, Tesla had a big role in this, but the K-Web beat the S&P by 1.3 today.
Yep.
Not just, obviously one day doesn't matter, especially when Tesla did heavy lifting on that outperformance. But still, K-Web was up a good bit, and the U.S., closed down. So just something to keep in the back of our mind. And we were just talking about this recently, how, from the calling the dogs off the trade war with China, from that point forward, K-Web had actually started to leak a little bit. But now that they had the actual phone call, maybe that kind of flips back the other way.
Run us through the indexes, by the way.
Yep. S&P closed down 0.53, NASDAQ 100 down 0.75. Give it up for the Russell, flat on the day. Equal weight down 0.27, Mag 7, obviously because of Tesla, down 2.6. Non-US equities were up 0.06, so pretty decent week for ex-US versus US. Tesla closed the day down 14 and change, and then is down another about 3% in after hours, overshadowing Microsoft, which put in a new high today. You have oil close up 0.8, gold down about 0.5, 0.6. The big movers today, kind of to me, the story of the day for markets is silver up about 3.5 and platinum up almost 5. And even palladium and copper look pretty good today. And that's with the dollar down 0.08. I would have thought when we finally had what looked like the real move in silver, because the dollar finally just snapped to a nasty new low, but kind of holding in flat. As far as yields go, the 2-year up about 6 basis points, which I think is insane. And the 10-year up about 4 basis points. The reason I say insane, we got data today. You had jobless claims tick up again. That's starting to get
on top of ADP, but yesterday.
Yeah, kind of talking about yesterday, yellow flag. Yeah. So to me, claims are a bit of a yellow flag. To me, 300,000 is the real recession level. So we're not there, but still keep 2 or 3 weeks in a row we've been higher than expected. And on top of that, we got the job cut announcements, which those keep coming down. But if you look at the level, you're still at what in the past was like recessionary levels. And even then, like just seeing the announcements in the last couple of days from the headlines, like Johnson & Johnson, some others, they're like, oh yeah, we're going to wipe out a few thousand, management jobs and, corporate jobs. Like, so there's been 2 or 3 bigger companies announced some pretty big moves in the last week. So
another piece of news that I saw, and a little bit more buried, a little bit more esoteric, but I think it is very telling because again, I would put it on the side of the ledger that really points to a stretched consumer and very much slowing growth. It's a very peak indicator. And that is that HELOC loans have surged to a 17-year high in terms of demand and issuance. Now, the reason why I think that that's a really big deal is that it has not been accompanied by a drop in rates, right?
It feels like desperation. Yeah,
totally. And it mirrors so many anecdotal things you're hearing in the economy because the headline numbers still look strong. Yet you're talking to so many business owners and places that are like, like you and I were talking about the separation between so much of the hard data and then the individual companies reporting, right? We've pointed at McDonald's, we've pointed at Starbucks, we've pointed at Nike, the list goes on and on. And HELOC loans, I looked at that and just so you guys know that HELOC lending is back at a level that you haven't seen since 08, right? Again, if you had just seen the 30-year drop 150 basis points, I wouldn't think that was such a big deal, but it hasn't, right? I mean, you're still, as far as mortgages go, you're still toward the highs, aren't you? I mean, we're still, what is 30-year money at? Are we still at 6.5, 7?
A little under, yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't, it's not like you're running out there to take advantage of the new cheap rates.
Yeah.
That also punches a hole. It doesn't win it. I mean, it's another data point, but it punches a hole in that, undefeatable, the consumer that's just completely bulletproof. And again, to me, it's a rate story, meaning the only reason you're getting a HELOC in this environment is if you have to.
Yeah, because if not, I mean, unless you, I don't really understand why else you do it, unless there's some sweetener in it that softens the rate blow. But
even then, I mean, so, chances are even after the sweetener, you're still 100, 150 bips above your base rate, on your, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
How much equity do you have to have? What is there?
80, I think it's like, I think 0.8 is that ratio.
So you got to have
20% equity, essentially.
You got to have 20% equity to access a HELOC.
Typically, I think that's where it's at.
Well, it should be like 20% down on a traditional mortgage.
Yeah.
Isn't that what they require?
Oh no, that was like in the 40s or something, man.
Oh really?
You can get FHA stuff for like 3 down or whatever.
But if you're like a first time home buyer,
you don't have to do 20.
Really?
Now there was a period after 08 where we tightened up pretty good, but the government mortgages, which dominate the mortgage industry,
yeah.
I think under 10, no problem, with reasonable credit or whatever. But and we're at the part of the cycle and now turning, but like where everyone has good credit or whatever, so like who cares?
Yeah. Well, I know, but then we've seen credit reports.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like that's starting to change a little.
Yeah.
But this it kind of feels like people borrowed some money, like ran out the credit cards or whatever. And it's like, oh, whatever. Like we'll just HELOC this thing whenever rates fall. And it's like they didn't, and you're like looking over at the expenses you've piled up that are 15% more rates or 20% rates, and you're like, okay, well. And may as well refi that into 6.
Yeah, and the tough part about that is that matches so much anecdotal, and some data-based stories in the economy as well. But I just keep hearing that from so many business owners. We're throttling back expectations. We're trying to get lean. We're looking for work. Work's getting tougher to come by. I was just having conversations last night about that with several different guys. So, and I think the illusion here is that as soon as you get a trade deal reached with China, that it's just, we're off to the races.
I just don't think we're going to get a deal with them that means anything anyway.
Not something that has the oomph or the ability to override the general macro winds that are blowing. And
Right.
I think you got a situation here in the US where the consumer's overextended and the growth is slowing down. I don't think it's catastrophic, but
Yeah, it's tough. To me, you know, I feel like as long as the market's up, consumers are going to be okay on aggregate. Now, with millions of people, not okay, but on aggregate, okay, as long as the market does its job. And that does so much for the top half, whatever.
I know, but that's why the HELOC data was surprising to me, because you got your markets, you know, took a little dip at the beginning of this year, but for the most part, the market has been, you know, even or slightly up for probably more of the year than it hasn't been.
And that's been a pretty steady trend with HELOC stuff, just kind of grinding higher every quarter. So, I mean, we had that crazy surplus savings after COVID. What it really may suggest is like, okay, now you can officially put the tombstone on the excess savings bulge and kind of understand that's over. I mean, household balance sheets are still very, very good historically, but you know, again, that's kind of on aggregate. Like there are a lot of people in the middle and at the bottom that it's not that way. Obviously, people at the bottom don't own a home to begin with, because if they did, they probably wouldn't be at the bottom. But if you kind of get in that middle section, I think this shows that like the middle is starting to, you know, their kind of income statement is becoming a bit of a grind. And hey, look, you see wages can continue to tick down on wage growth. I think I tweeted about this yesterday. Like, because wage growth just keeps coming back in, and I don't know if that will last, but for now, like the trend is very clear, down on wage growth. You really cannot afford, you know, an inflation pickup, because that would just squeeze real incomes like hard and fast. So, I mean, we'll see how that goes. Maybe we'll get it, maybe we won't, but it would hurt the economy more right now than I think it did back in like 2020 when you were, you know, throwing money at everyone.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And we have seen signs of kind of a resurgence. I mean, resurgence is too strong a word, but a bit of a rebound in inflationary pressures. I'm just wondering how much of that is related to tariffs and front-running tariffs. Obviously, we know the tariffs really haven't caused it. I guess they're just starting to increase prices. But you had inflation ticking up prior to that. So my question is that real inflationary pressure, or do you think that's due to front-running of tariffs?
I mean, inflation itself, you just look at like PCE, like it's fine. They're what, 2.3% or something? Like
something like that.
But like I like to watch Trueflation to kind of get a more real-time gauge. And that, I mean, that had fallen to 1.2, got all the way up to 2.1, has leaked back to like 1.9. But I've been saying I thought that could hit 3 this summer. So like that has bottomed. And there are some segments that look like they've bottomed. Now, honestly, the question when it comes to inflation is, I mean, obviously the tariffs make prices go up on goods. Like there's no two ways around that. The question is that enough to overcome potential deflation on the services side? Because like if people are like, look, because I can't afford this couch anymore, I'm getting a haircut, you know, once every 3 months or whatever. Like, do those offset on the big broad level, or, you know, does the goods inflation just overcome some of that disinflation from the rest of it? And if you think about housing, like rents are still negative. They've been negative for a while. And pretty clearly, homes like for sale are about to go negative on a year over year basis. So that now you get to the point where like, okay, the two big things are housing and energy, right? Those like the big weights. And if housing is going to basically be flat to down, while oil's under $70, like it's hard to have much inflation in that environment, even with, you know, your couch and your TV and everything kind of costs more.
Man, you've got a massive imbalance currently in housing with people looking to sell versus people looking to buy.
Yeah.
Is a massive imbalance.
Yeah. It's not a healthy market right now.
No. And you know what that signals to me too, is that home equity levels are overstated.
I have no doubt about that. Every time I look at my own home's value, I'm just like, nah.
No, I know. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I bought mine more recently, but
yeah, I just want to like tell Zillow, like, can you just take this down a notch? Because I don't think that's right.
Yeah, let's dial this back 10 or 12%. Would you just because it's because the comps have become comps are only, it's kind of like VWAP.
Yeah, it's a trailing moving average.
Yeah.
If you're watching the real time data, you're like, no.
No.
So in my own neighborhood, like we talked about, like the house behind me, like price cut after price cut after price cut. Well, that means mine's doing the same.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you are talking to the guy that bought his first house in July of 2006 while I was beginning to short the market. So everybody else's house was going to go down, not mine.
Yeah, that's how it works, right?
Yeah. Well, it's the old adage, right? Recessions when your neighbor loses his job, depressions when you lose yours.
I had a good buddy that bought in Vegas at the very top.
Oof.
And the cool thing was, I'll never forget this. Like I learned a lot about how these things work. He did the like short sell, like sell it back to the bank thing or whatever. And he got a lawyer for it, which was a good call. They offered like, how about you pay us like whatever it was, like 60,000 and we'll let you walk away. The counter was, how about 0? And they were like, okay, accepted. The beauty was he had refied, he had like done a little like cash out refi like early on because it was just straight up and paid off his car. So essentially what he got was he walked away with no problem and a free car in his short sale. Like just smashed his credit for 4 years or whatever, but like who cares?
Yeah, that's not how they treated me. Yeah, that was one of the most frustrating times because we were sitting there. I remember, people all over our street are getting foreclosed on, doing short sales, handing the banks back the keys and getting away with it, right? Just walking away. And I'm calling the bank, trying to work them because we were renting it out at that point, but the rent had fallen below what the mortgage was. And kept going back to the bank going, what's the issue? And I will never forget this phone call. They were like, the issue is you keep paying your bills.
It's literally true.
Yeah. And they were like, if you want to, and I'm sitting there going, let me get this straight. Because I'm honoring the terms of our agreement, you're not willing. And at the time, the thing people didn't understand is that when you've got all of that happening around you, right? And you're still paying, when you got short sales going on, the comps around you are getting destroyed.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so you're bailing those guys out, but you're effectively punishing the people that continue to pay their debts. And so we ended up having to give it back to the boy. And it wasn't a strategic thing. I just couldn't afford it anymore. Right. That was right when I was struggling to start my advisory business and we just couldn't afford it. So we just had to give the keys back to them.
Yeah.
And, but we didn't get a free car out of it. Never had a chance to refi.
That. I remember like he was doing this and I'm like talking to him. He's like, I'm like, dude, there's no way they're going to go from like 60 to 0 and say yes. And like 2 days later, he got the letter, said yes. I'm like, what? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it was one of those things where it's like, hey, doesn't hurt to ask, right? We'll see if we can get 60 grand out of this piker, then we'll take it.
My lawyer thinks they're taking it. I'm like, there's no way. Sure enough.
Yeah. Sounds like a good lawyer.
Yeah. That was worth whatever that person got paid.
Yeah. Anything else we need to hit on today? I mean, I think we touched on metals. I'll continue to say that this does not look like a short-term move. I mean, look at the way the miners are starting to behave across the board. You look at the way the juniors are now leading the majors. I mean,
the platinum and silver charts are not ugly charts. I'll put it that way.
I really like that sector. It was like I put on Twitter the other day or yesterday. I was like, we need to buy more gold. And I don't mean that. I'm not suggesting you go out and do it, but just, I look around the world today and boy, it just screams own some gold.
Yeah.
So anyway, all righty, guys. Well, you guys know the drill. You can find us on YouTube. Just search Know Your Risk Podcast. Go to knowyourriskpodcast.com. Got our big interview with Brent coming up. We had to bump it to a little later in the week because of a travel issue on my end, but we're doing Brent next week. Brent Johnson, again, perfect timing, talk dollar, currencies, all that kind of stuff. Great source. But yeah, and then I will be out of here. You're going to be rolling solo on the dots Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Let me write that down. All right.
I might be able to jump in on with one or two of those days.
Speaking of, we'll do this. We're live on the air. I'll basically September 30th through like the first half of October is when I'll be out of pocket over in the motherland of England.
Oh, what are you going over there for? The trip.
Splitting between New York and London.
Yeah, because of the game.
Yeah, going to watch the Browns in the motherland. So
and their high flying offense and their star quarterback, right?
We got 4 of them, so that can't hurt. I saw a thing about we should get Kirk Cousins on like ESPN the other day. We have 4 quarterbacks. We wouldn't be 5.
Wonder if 4 quarterbacks are worth one good one.
I don't think it works.
It's not
that
the way the math works.
We've tried that before, I think, and it usually doesn't work out.
Quarterback by committee.
Yeah, you can't stack them on the chart and make them bigger.
Can't add their arm strength together.
But the odds that one of them might be decent, hey, I'll take that.
Well, for what it's worth, I think they're taking the right
4
approach.
lottery tickets is better than 1 lottery ticket.
Yes.
That's the point I'm making.
Yes, and I think they're taking the right approach.
I agree. The shotgun approach, because no one knows how to draft a quarterback.
Nobody. Good luck. Anyway, all right, that does it for us, guys. We will see you tomorrow. You're listening to the Know Your Risk podcast. Download and subscribe at knowyourriskpodcast.com.
Investment advice cannot be given without a client service agreement. Zach Abraham is an investment advisor representative of Trek Financial, an SEC registered investment advisor. Bulwark Capital Management is a marketing name only and does not carry a separate registration.